And 1, 2, 3, go. Hello, my name is Mark. You may know me from jack shit because none of my stuff is popular, and it's very deservingly so since I don't produce high quality content. Alright, so this is going to be a tutorial for those who are sort of familiar with programming but just want to get into Unity 5. So there's like some rules for Unity, well not really rules, but just like certain methods and variable types that come with using the Unity Engine API. And the most common types are these right here: transform, game object, animator, animation, rigid body, collider, audio source, and lesson 1. Now if you're not familiar with types, here are some types that you've probably been using before if you're familiar with any type of programming or computer science class. Int, bool, string, float. You can understand what these are. Ints for integer, just a solid number with no decimal. Boolean is a true or false. String is a quote, and what I mean by quote, or not really quote, it's just like thing, like it has to be in quotes. That's pretty much what I mean. And then float, decimal, like it's just it's like a double, but with that can go like extremely longer, and you have to put an F at the end of it to let it know that you're using a float. Now a double is just a lesser mole, a lesser decimal. That is just these two things. It's a 3.0 and doesn't go any farther than that really. Transform is just transform refers to, in Unity, as a type. It refers to basically anything that is like its position, rotation, and scale on a global level, and even a local level, but you can get into that later. Game object type is basically just an existence of the object itself. This is a game object. Main camera is a type of game object. Now an animator is just something that just handles animations and basically can set up things like states that you can just make as a integer, or other things like booleans and crap like that. Basically determine when an animation is played and how long it is played for. That's what an animator does, and you will find most of these variable types in components. Like physics will have rigid body and collider types. The same goes for physics 2D. Like basically every single type for physics is just 2D at the end of it, which is very handy when it comes to scripting. Audio source is one of the main things you're going to be using as a variable type. Animator, this is the animator variable type now. Like this is just another type. We'll handle the animations and stuffs. Alright, and then like if you didn't know this before, you can use scripts as a type basically. Like this script is called lesson 1, and then you can use it as a type, and it's any script type is just a user created type. Now in Unity there's several methods that you'll be using most commonly, and like for sure you'll always be using like start or update, because they just come with whenever you start a new script. Like they're just part of it, they're predetermined, and they don't require any parameters. And parameters is just like the crap that goes inside the parentheses, an argument basically, if you're not familiar with that already. Now let's see. Alright, so you're familiar with some of the, or I told you about these types. You're not really familiar, but you'll get to know them pretty soon. Let's see. I called game object, type game object, what is it, transform. Thing 1 is of type transform. So you want to make thing 1 equal to this dot get component transform. Now what get component is just another type of method. It's the most common thing one of the more common things you'll be using, get component. Now if you notice one thing about get component, in its parameter, it's not parentheses, it's these carets, and it's not asking for a string type argument, it's just asking for the type in general. So thing1 is of type transform, right? And so in order, it needs a reference of type transform, right? So we will make it to this dot get component transform, if that can make sense. You're just making a transform variable equal to this transform, which meaning this keyword means like that the script itself or whatever the script is attached to, like whatever object it's attached to. Like if I were to attach this to main camera, this script, lesson 1, to main camera, and it has a transform, the variable thing1 would now equal the camera's transform. It would equal its scale, position, and rotation. This right here, find with tag, or any find method. The find methods include find objects with tag, just find in general, like without using find with tag, you can just do that. Find just looks for the name, so in this case the name is main camera, and so this variable would not actually find anything, it would just return null. So you could just put main camera, and it needs to be one word, and it would return like this, like that's the name of the object, and so it is now equal to whatever this thing2 game object type is now equaling to main camera because we put that as the parameter right there. See, name, find. Now find with tag is kind of different. Like tags in Unity is just basically a grouping of objects. Same with layers. Layers are kind of like a grouping of objects. It's really just like depthy, and it's whatever how like big you want your project to get. You'll use tags, layers of tags, tags of layers. And if you use 2D, then there's layers specifically for sprites and stuff like that. So once again, this works because we are setting a game object type to find main camera, and main camera is a game object. Like anything in Unity that you create is a game object, and there's very few exceptions to that. Now this thing1 is equal to game object.find with tag. Now if there was a tag called player, which there is, that comes pre-made whenever you start a new project, then this should make it to where thing1 is equal to whatever currently in the global space has a tag player. Now when you press F8, it gives off, oh shit, you press F8, it'll give you an error because these are different types. Thing1, by the way, F8 just saves all the scripts together, save all. Thing1 is of type transform, and game object is its own different type. So that's why this gets screwy, because you can't convert those types unless you cast, but that's a different story. And you really shouldn't be casting Unity type variables in the first place. It's better to just cast like your normal int, bool, strings, and floats and doubles. So there's the find methods, there's the get component methods, and there isn't just regular get component. Like there's many find methods, like find objects with tag, just find. There's multiple get components. There's get component in child, which is, if you're not familiar with that, then a child is just like if you're creating some type of tree. Let's just make a cube. So now this, if you look at this tree right here, this cube is a child of main camera. See that? I can click this drop down arrow and it only shows the parent, main camera. So you click down the arrow and now you have, if there were multiple children, it would list all the children of main camera. And you can make children of children and things like that. So get component in child just gets something specific in the child. And there isn't just this .get component in, or there isn't get component in child, there's get component in children and get component in parent. So if I wanted to do get component in parent, I would have to do it when a script attached to cube, and it would get a component of the main camera. I hope that helps. Maybe you can follow along. If you're not following along well, then I have a Google Doc with a lot of information that will be over this lesson, and an index of things that can also help you. Alright, so other methods that need parameters all the time that you'll be constantly using is on collision enter. It requires an event type collision. Now events are they're just events. Like I can try to find a better explanation probably in a different video, but just think about events. You know, if something happens or something has happened, you use it as an argument, and like whatever event happens here, you just type your logic here or whatever statement you want concerning the event that just happened. And be wary of the capitalization in Unity. It always needs to be like this. It always needs this type of capitalization, because otherwise the method just won't work. This col, if you're not familiar with parameters, is just like this always has to be the same, this parameter type, but you can name your parameter whatever. You can name it fucking dicks, but doesn't matter, it'll work. It just needs a reference. But I call it col because that's kind of a standard for anything, and it's mainly used in the scripting reference inside of Unity. You'll find col pretty often. And on trigger enter is another method that requires a parameter and also needs you to keep this capitalization type thing in check here, otherwise it won't work. This requires a type collider. It's not an event type. Notice these things are pretty similar, collision and collider. Collision is the event, collider is just a game object type. This is a collider. That's also a collider. This is an event. I also use the parameter type col in this one because why not? It's pretty short term. You can also name it whatever the hell you want, but just keep it short and simple. I'd put col, and then you put whatever logic statements you want here, or anything concerning the parameter. Now this trigger does not go off unless a type of collider goes into the trigger. And now what a trigger is, if you're not familiar in Unity, it's a type. It's like a different option for a collider. So let's make a box collider for this thing. You see that right there? This little green stuff that's around the camera, that's the collider. Alright, and then to make it a trigger, you just fucking click this thing right here. That's it. Now, once clicking the trigger, Unity has its own physics engine, so clicking trigger kind of just discontinues it from just working, because a trigger just becomes a zone of entrance for a game object to enter, and it just waits for that to happen until something of a collider type enters that trigger zone. Hence, on trigger enter. And on collision enter is just if you don't have trigger selected and you just have it as a regular collider, then it waits for something else to just hit it in global space, and that's when it just checks itself, or when it calls that method. Both are pretty useful. You can use different methods for different situations, obviously. Most of the time we're probably going to be using on trigger enter, though. Very few times where you'll be using on collision enter, even though it's still an important method. You can make your own methods in Unity if you're just wondering about that. You can do that for many things, but those of you who aren't just familiar with much programming, you can make your own methods. I called this one Void Homework because this is something I would like you guys to do. Something short and simple that you can just figure out in a second, pretty much, if you just read over whatever notes I put in the Google Doc for you. And you'll pretty much be able to do after I teach you just these common methods and crap like that. For the rest of the lesson, we probably won't be using onCollisionEnter or onTriggerEnter, but we will definitely be using them in the future. Alright, so we have object transformed. So we're going to fix this error. First of all, we're actually going to just get rid of this, because Unity will not let you attach a script to an object unless the script is completely without error. These things right here, these are just warnings. You're going to get a lot of them while scripting and not connecting your scripts or classes together. This is like whenever you don't have references for a lot of your things, or in general when a parameter, or no, when a variable is just not used, you'll get these warnings. They will not stop the game from running. Just a regular red error will always stop the game from running. Just, you don't always need to pay attention to these. These will come up very often, so don't get worried by them. Alright, see, it's saying like a sign, but it's never used. Yeah, that's fine. That'll always happen a lot, unless you just choose to use them. Alright, so we're going to attach, if we haven't already, attach lesson 1 to main camera. Now you can drag it. There's plenty of ways you can do this. You can drag it into the game scene onto the camera itself, or you can drag it from here to main camera, and now you'll see that there's 2. Or you can just go from here to the or to the inspector of the main camera, and now you'll see that there's 3. And then you can also do add component scripts lesson 1. That. See, there's multiple different ways of doing things in Unity, and it's pretty convenient. Alright, so I'm going to run this real quick. And maybe there'll be no errors. Yeah, and there's no errors. Okay, cool. So what happened, like, because there's no errors, because it was able to find like a transform type in this, because there's a transform attached to the camera, and this is attached to the camera, this script, so it looks around for anything that's a transform in the camera, and it says, hey, this has a transform, so that'll be my reference for later on whenever the variable is used. And then thing 2 did not error out because it was able to find a game object with the name main camera. And yeah, that method just finds whatever object is named main camera. There's probably gonna be conflict later on if like you name objects like the same name. It'll definitely fucking error out. That's probably when you use GameObject.find objects of type or find objects of tag. It's just whatever. Just whenever you're using something like this, make sure there's only like one thing named that, or whatever reference you're trying to do. Otherwise, unless you're using like find objects with tag, then you don't want to just name one thing like that. I think that's pretty much it. I probably wasn't that clear, but hopefully the Google Doc I created for you is pretty helpful, and if not, then you can just comment in the section below and ask me some more questions. Again, this is for people who are already sort of familiar with programming. I'm also trying to make it towards where people who aren't that familiar can also understand, but I really doubt that if you're not familiar already you're gonna understand well, so I don't know, might make a different video for that. But yeah, so just go over real quick. These are types you should already be familiar with: int, bool, string, float, double, and these are the types that are introduced in Unity. because of this right here, this API. Transform, game object, animator, animation, rigid body, collider, audio source, lesson. And, well, lesson 1 is my own user created type. But yeah, these right here are a lot of types that you're going to be using. Then get component methods and find methods. Then on collision enter, on trigger enter. You won't really need to remember these too soon, so still try to remember them. They'll be useful. Just remember them. And then homework, if you care to do this. It's just good exercise. Just gets you thinking. So make thing1 equal to an object with the transform type and with the tag player using find with tag and get component. So you're going to basically just making thing1 equal to something. Okay, first you want to create, like, just follow the instructions, I guess, from here on out. Like you're well, create a new object, 3D object. It's going to be a sphere. And what we're going to do right here for sphere is that we're going to tag it player. Now if you don't have sphere selected, you're going to want to do that. So in the hierarchy, make sure sphere is selected when you tag it player. Otherwise you might end up tagging something else that shouldn't be tagged. And so once you have something tagged player, it can now reference, or you can now reference that object with its tag. So, you know, find with tag main camera, and this will work because main camera is not only just named main camera but also tagged main camera. So this sphere has a tag player. Now thing1 is a transform type, so what you're going to be doing is that you're going to be getting component transform, and then, or no, you're going to be finding the object with the tag, and then you're going to be getting the component. Like, and how you do things like that is right after you find something, like right after you find something with the tag or just with the name, you do a dot. It's simple stuff like get hash code, things like, I'm basically showing you the homework part already, like by doing that, like get component and then thing, and that'll work, except it's red because there's no type that was named blah blah blah. It doesn't exist. Alright, and lesson 1, and that'll go fine until I press F8. Then it'll error out because you can't mix match types. Alright, so that's the homework part. Make thing1 equal to an object with a transform type and with a tag player using find with tag and component. So you're basically making thing1 equal to game object dot find with tag player dot get component, you know, the type that it needs, which would be a transform. And just think about it. I'm basically just telling you what to do, but just try it and do it below this code section. And how you'll be able to do this is just by like downloading Unity and just opening this up. I'll also be putting all of the code for this script onto the Google Doc as well, and you'll just Control-C, Control-V, and then put in your own code, like right here and stuff. And then once you're done with that, then you just feel happy about yourself into the next video, and I'll show you like the answer or the conclusion to what the answer would be, basically. Yeah, that errors out. Alright, I think that'll be it for this video. Have a good day. See you later.